All right, just a couple things, and we'll get on our way. I know you guys are looking forward to chapel before. How many of you have heard Mr. Stephen Lawwell before for chapel? I would say he's probably one of our favorite speakers. I know you enjoy the intro, so we're looking forward. We don't want to take too much of his time, but just a couple things here. Remember, tomorrow and Wednesday, district academic testing. That is those state academic tests, so we want you to do well on those. Also today, we do have home games, 4, 5:15, and 6:30. The only teams that do not play today are varsity girls, but everyone else will play as normal. This announcement for varsity girls, cheerleaders, and varsity boys. Remember, Wednesday, you are leaving for Pensacola. Bus will leave at 7 o'clock. And we need to make sure you turn in that $30 into the office. And then just make sure you bring money for meals. You'll need 2 meals total, 1 meal on the way down, and then 1 meal on the way back. And while you're there, you'll eat pretty good food, so you probably won't have to spend too much money while you're there. Also, how many of you had a chance to see one of the JV Hoops games on Thursday, Friday? If we could have our JV girls please stand. They took second place. Let's give them a good hand. Great job, girls. Also, making the all-tournament team, if we could have these people stand, for the boys, Cameron Johnson. And then for the girls, Savannah Lawwell and Emily Harrelson. Let's give them a good hand. Now, that's not even standing up. Now, stand up. Stand up. Now, let's clap for Emily. Thank you. I do think we are long overdue. I think Friday we need to have a Gene Day. What do you think? So we will do a Gene Day on Friday. You do need to bring $1 for Honor Society if you do choose to participate. And remember, for that Gene Day, that does mean comfy shoes for the guys. And as I said, our speaker today, Mr. Stephen Lawwell, we're looking forward to hearing him. But Mr. Pearson, I think you got a quick song, and we'll be on our way.
Quick song. What a mighty God we serve today. That's a good, happy one. Stand up. Here we go. What a mighty God we serve. Sing it with a smile, because we do serve a mighty God. Here we go. Ready? What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God we serve. Move it up. Ready? What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God we serve. Move it up. Here we go. What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God we serve. We move it up again. What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. Come on, you can do it. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God we serve. One more, here we go. What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty. Joel's got one more in him. Here we go, ready? What a mighty God. Girls dropped an octave, didn't you? We serve. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God. All right, good. Hey, did I miss any birthdays this week? Anybody? No, not Drew. Have a seat. Have a seat. Anybody's birthday? Come on, tell me real quick. No birthdays? All right, sounds good. I want to make sure because, you know, some people feel left out. They're like, you didn't sing to me on my birthday. And I say, I'm sorry, I didn't know. What? Your brother's was last week? Check him, happy birthday. You the man. But Brother Lawwell needs to speak, so I won't embarrass you today, okay? But when your sisters comes, we will embarrass her. All right, let's give Brother Lawwell a good hand this morning. I know you're looking forward to hearing him speak.
Man, good morning. Man, it's awesome to be here. I love you guys. You guys stand up, turn around. Some people say, oh, that's so silly, that's for children. It actually helps get the blood flowing. When you sit for a long period of time, it constricts the blood flow, and it helps you think a little clearer, okay? Even throughout your day, if you get up, just loosen up a little bit and sit back down. It's going to be huge for your brain, okay? So that's why we do it. So we're going to see who's the slow ones here this morning. You ready? All right. We know who the slow ones are in the room. Job chapter 38, verse 1. Of course, you probably already know what's happened to Job. Job has had a lot of things happen in his life. He's begun to really question. His friends have begun to question God's role in his life. And they ask some very difficult questions. And God answers Job. And the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? He said, Job, you don't know what you're talking about. Gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? That's done in verse 4. Job, where were you when I made all of this? How are you going to answer that? Your parents ever ask you questions like this? Where were you when I made the money to pay the bills, right? And to buy the food, right? It's a question that's meant for you not to answer. It's meant for you to just sit there and be quiet and let them vent, right? It said, declare if thou hast understanding. Verse 35, he says, canst thou send lightnings? Job, can you even make it lightning? No. The reason God's asking these questions is there for the purpose of perspective. He's trying to get Job to think differently than what he was thinking before. That's what your parents often do when they ask similar questions. But there's one question in particular I want us to focus on. It's Job chapter 40 and verse 9. He asked Job, hast thou an arm like God? Funny question. When we think about it, you think of, okay, how do you compare our arm to God? Is it something like this? I mean, that's even way too close when we're comparing us to God. Most of what I deal with when I speak to people is worldview. It's how they view the world. It's the overall perspective from which one sees and interprets the world. So your worldview determines how you view yourself, how you view others, how you view your environment. It's going to impact how you live your life, the decisions you're going to make day to day. And your worldview is derived from everything that you've experienced. The house environment, the home environment you grew up in, where you go to school, where you end up working, all of those variables feed into the formula that becomes you, and that's your worldview. But your worldview, I believe, actually is based on something even higher, and that's your God view, your mental picture of God. And we all have it. When you close your eyes and you pray, there's a picture in your mind of God. Some people, maybe he's an old guy with a really long white beard, right? Or maybe he's somebody that looks like you. Everybody has it, and you're the only person that knows what your God view is, your mental picture. But this is very important because that view of God is actually going to influence your worldview and influence everything about your life. So I want to really focus on your mind today and try to stretch it and help you have the right perspective. So 3 questions we're going to ask, very, very simple questions with the sole purpose of influencing your perspective. How big is God? How strong is God? And how smart is God? Very, very basic questions, but I hope that these will impact your life. So the first one, how big is God? Is he 6'3"? Is he 5'8"? What is he? Well, I like using outer space for this exercise because it helps stretch the brain and helps you put things in perspective. We're going to switch to a very special car. Now, I don't know what kind of Chevy this is. You guys that keep up with cars, I know you can tell by the back of it. It's a 57, 56, or whatever. I don't care. It just takes me where I want to go. But we've got a space car version of that. And we're going to start driving from Earth out into space. We're going to first go to the moon. And we're going to travel 60 miles an hour, about 20 miles an hour below what many of you drove to school today trying to get here on time. But now you understand the speed you're traveling. How long do you think it will take you to get to the moon? Has anybody got a guess? Raise your hand. 50 years. Wow, that's really long. 165 days. Okay? 165 days. So if you left right now, you would get there about the first or second week of July. Okay? Pack a few meals. Okay? And you better go to the restroom. Okay? Because there's no place to stop on the way there. Now we're going to go to the sun. Same vehicle. It's about 93 million miles. That distance we use for measuring things in the solar system. It's called an astronomical unit. So that's sort of like a ruler for measuring everything else. How long, anybody got a guess on how long it would take to get to the sun? 3 years. 60 miles an hour, it would take you 150 years to just get to the sun. You're not going to make it in your lifetime, okay? That's just to get to our closest star, the sun. Now, this is our solar system. You may have learned the planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and then Pluto, which I learned, but they've degraded him to just a rock flying out there, which is really hurtful. He was a planet when I grew up. But if you travel 60 miles an hour, how long do you think it would take to reach Pluto? Anybody got a guess? This guy right here. 450 years, 6,000 years. So if you started when Adam and Eve were created, you would just now make it to Pluto. Yeah, we don't have a fast enough car, do we? So we're going to switch vehicles. Now we're going to upgrade. Okay? Any of the Trekkies? We got the Enterprise. Okay? Now, just for theory, okay, our ship is going to travel the speed of light. Although when you get in physics, you may learn that's not really good for you if you do that. Okay? Bad things happen. But you can do it on TV and you can do it in chapel service. Okay? So our vehicle is going to travel the speed of light, which is approximately 186,000 miles per second. Okay? A lot faster. When I was young, my dad used to play a joke with me. He said, "Why don't you turn the light switch off in the bedroom and see if you can get in bed before it gets dark?" I almost separated my shoulder flying across the room, slamming into stuff. I didn't understand that light travels much faster than I could. A light year is actually a distance. It's not a time. It's a distance. It's the distance that light can travel in a year. It's about 6 trillion miles. It's a long, long ways. So we're going to go back and look at our solar system, but instead of now going from the sun to the edge, we're going to go from the edge to the edge. So how long do you think it would take light to go across our solar system from side to side? You may got a guess? Get somebody new here. 200 years. 10 hours, okay? 10 light hours, okay? So we upgraded our vehicle quite a bit, okay? So we're traveling much, much faster. We can get from one side to the other and no real fatigue at all. The next closest star to us, of course our sun is a star, but the next closest one is called Proxima Centauri. It is 4.3 light years away. So for seniors, based on where you are in your year, if you go to college, if you left right now traveling at the speed of light, you would get to the next star when it's time to graduate from college. That's just one star, the next star. Your brain's starting to stretch a little bit. Grab years if you need to, it'll help. Our one galaxy contains 100 billion stars, and it would take over 4 years just to get to the closest one. To go across our galaxy would take 100,000 years traveling at the speed of light. That's just one galaxy. And when you look up there, there are estimated to be about 100 billion galaxies right now. I think there's many more than that, with their own batch of stars and everything else. See, when you look at Jeremiah chapter 33:22, it says, "The host of heaven cannot be numbered, neither the sand of the sea measured." God told us don't even try counting them because there's too many. Okay? He knows how many he made. But put this in perspective. When he described the act of creation for that all those stars, all that space. He said it in 5 words. He made these stars also. It was an afterthought to our God. How many verses did he use to describe the creation of Adam, Eve? See how much more importance he places on us than he does on the stars? But our brains can't comprehend the extent of what he did just out in space. But when he describes it, he says, the heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool. It's nothing to him. He said, my right hand spanned the heavens. Guys, we think it's great because we can palm a basketball. He can palm the universe. And that's what he said. My right hand spans the heavens. All right, so that helps you understand a little bit of how big God is. Secondly, how strong is he? What can he bench press? A little bit, right? We're going to look at electricity or magnetism, whatever helps you understand this better this morning. To understand some principles to teach us just how strong God is. Now, you learn probably in your science class this year, because you learn it typically in different subjects, that like charges will repel. What do opposite charges do? They attract. Okay? Now, when we look at other things in life, this applies, not just in physics, but it applies with love. This is why the prettiest girls will marry the ugliest boys. So guys, there's hope for you, okay? Mr. Kramer and myself, we would attest to this, that we're very glad that this is true, not just in physics, okay? It also works with magnets, okay? So you have north and south poles. They will attract each other. If you take 2 north poles, they will repel each other. So whatever helps you, electricity or magnetism or love, whatever helps you understand this concept, it is there in nature. Now an atom, it has many, many subatomic particles, but the first ones you learn about, there's the 3 major ones. Who can name those for me? That's exactly right. So protons and neutrons are in the center of the atom, and the electrons are outside, and they fly around. Now, depending on how many of those you have in it, that tells you what type of atom it is. For example, if it's got 6 protons, you automatically know that it's carbon. Okay? If it's got 1, it's hydrogen, 2, it's helium. You guys, the big chart that's probably in your classroom shows you all that stuff. But what I want to point out is the charge of those particles. Protons are what charged? Positively charged. Neutrons are neutral, and electrons are negatively charged. Okay? Very important for what I want to share with you this morning. When you think about the structure of the atom, and that the protons are in the center, in the nucleus, all bunched together, and the electrons fly around the outside, is there anything that comes to mind to you that says, that is weird? It should not do that. Knowing what you know about charges. I'm letting the brains work a little bit. Shouldn't the protons repel each other? They're all positively charged. When you stick positively charged things together, what do? They go apart. Shouldn't the electrons not be flying around the outside? Shouldn't they look at the protons and say, come here? And, right? Shouldn't that be what happens? But they don't. And this has messed physicists up for years. And they don't know how to explain it fully, so they've given some names to some things. One of them is a force they call the strong nuclear force. And I'm just going to read the subsection under there. Positively charged particles naturally repel each other. It's an extreme amount of force. It takes an extreme amount of force to hold protons together. The strong nuclear force overcomes the repulsion between protons to hold together atomic nuclei. Without the strong nuclear force, complex nuclei cannot form. So whatever this Jedi force is they're talking about is holding the atoms together. Now it's a legitimate part of science. I'm not making fun of it. But they recognize that these atoms should not be stuck together based on everything else we know. There's a force that's holding them together and keeping them from coming apart. Colossians chapter 1 and verse 16 and verse 17. It says, "For by him," talking about God, "were all things created that are in heaven and they're in earth, visible and invisible." And it said, "And he is before all things, and by him all things consist." This is the only place in the entire Bible where the word consist appears. And when you take your concordance out, it means to bring or band together. So what that means is God is the force. He's actually holding every atom together to keep it from coming apart. That's how powerful he is. Hebrews chapter 1 verse 3 says that he's upholding all things by the word of his power. See, he's involved in every single atom in our lives. And those that would choose to dishonor him, I want you to really grasp this. They do it with the bodies, the minds, the voices that are actually held together by the God that they're targeting with their hatred. When something comes out of your mouth that is not pleasing to God, you are using the very atoms he is holding together. I really want that to sink in, because it's a perspective that I want you to have of God in your life. He's that powerful. When Richard Dawkins endorses signs where they say there's probably no God, it's printed on the paper using the ink. He's on a bus that's with atoms held together by the God that he denies. This girl here walking in Minnesota, and these are the people that I minister to. These are the people that I have my ministry for. Walking with a sign that says, "Smile, there's no hell." She's doing that. The smile on her face is because of God. He allows it. That's why we should take such great care with what we do and with what God has given us. And it puts new perspective on Psalm chapter 86, verse 15, where it says, "But thou, O Lord, art a God full of compassion, gracious, long-suffering, and plenteous in mercy and truth." That verse basically says God puts up with a whole lot from us. And he lets us get away with it for a while. You understand? That's why he's a gracious and merciful God, in spite of the things that we do. But there is something that I like to call God's big bang that's coming. And that's when everything's going to be impacted because of this. 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 10 talks about a time in the future. "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise." Boom. God's big bang. "And the elements shall melt with fervent heat." All those little boxes on the periodic table in your classroom, they're going to melt. How does an element melt? It's when the atoms split. "The earth also and all the works that are therein shall be burned up." There's going to be a loud noise, there's going to be a lot of heat, and everything's going to burn up. That is a nuclear reaction that occurs when atoms come apart. We split just a few atoms on a couple of cities in Japan and killed hundreds of thousands of people in World War II. What do you think is going to happen when God says, "You know what? I'm done with this earth and heaven." He's going to let it all go. But the cool thing is, he's going to create a whole new one. And that's Revelation chapter 21 and verse 1. "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea." See, God, when he's done with this earth and this heaven, he's going to let it go and recreate another one. And that's for us. For those that believe and trust in him, we get to experience all of that. It's going to be so awesome to see him recreate it from the very atomic level. Start over. So we serve a big God and we serve a really strong God. Don't pull a muscle there, Jay. Third thing, how smart is God? What's his IQ? Anybody know who this strange looking fellow is? Who? Thomas Edison. Really sharp guy. had over 1,000 patents for his inventions. Many of the things we enjoy in life are because of the hard work of Thomas Edison. Very, very thankful for him. And God has instructed us to learn about his creation. That's one particular thing. I like science. I know some of you may not like science, but science is not just a bunch of boring stuff. It really gets you to some cool things. You have your cell phone because of science. You have lights. You have heat. You have clothes. All that stuff because of science. But I want to look at something in particular called biomimicry. It's something that humans, it's a field of science. But I want to start with nature to help you understand the concept. Does anybody know what kind of bird this is? It's a mockingbird. Why don't we call it a mockingbird? It mocks. It hears the song of other birds and it tries to repeat them. So a mockingbird. So even within nature, you have one thing that tries to mock or imitate something else. This is an insect that's on a leaf. So he's imitating the leaf and it keeps him safe. Watch real closely this underwater video of this plant life on the left-hand side. Is that not cool? Watch it. It's going to go in reverse, and you're going to actually see. Watch his eye as well as he goes on to that plant life. He'll actually change his eye at the last second. You know that thing was born into this world knowing how to do that? Not evolution, designed by God. But he imitates his surroundings. He came into this world with that knowledge. Sometimes we imitate each other or animals, right? We're imitators too. That's how we actually learn how to eat and walk. I mean, some of you got little brothers or sisters, and you know how you're feeding them. What do you do to get them to open their mouth to shove the spoon in it? You do this, right? You show them, I want you to open your mouth, and as soon as you do, I'm going to shove it in real fast. That's how we learn, is imitating. Johann Kepler, brilliant mathematician, physicist, he said, you know what? He really felt that what he was doing was thinking God's thoughts after him. He was like, God's already figured all this stuff out, and I'm just coming in behind him and discovering some of the same things. For example, birds can fly. God designed them to fly. So mankind, by watching birds, and you can debate whether Wright brothers were the first ones to fly. I personally don't think they were. But man has learned how to fly by watching things in nature that can fly. We imitated it. And now I can fly to Seattle like I did a few weeks ago and come back and land just fine. No issue at all. And they come in all shapes and sizes just like birds do. This is a road reflector. Okay? This is when you're going down the road, this is what helps you see where the lines or the edge of the road is at. They're designed based on a cat's eye. They're actually called a cat's eye reflector. When you come home, if you've got a cat outside and your headlights go on them, you see those little beady eyes looking at you, right? Reflecting. The reason is the inside of their eyeball, if you ever dissect a cat and you cut his eyeball in half, when you look at the back of his eye, it's very reflective. The light comes in and it goes right back out. Cat's eyes, cow's eyes do it, a lot of animals. But this was not because some really smart guy just came up with it. He knew how a cat's eye worked, and he went and ripped it off and made reflectors. Not like ripped it, he ripped off the concept. Let me rephrase that. I saw some horror, whoa, sticking eyeballs down the road, right? Lightning bugs. How many of you ever caught these when you were little? Put them in jars. Yeah, one of my friends, we made the mistake of making the holes too big in the lid. And I woke up at 3 in the morning and there were 150 lightning bugs in my bedroom. So we were up all night trying to catch them so my mom didn't find out about it. But they produce what's called a cold light. Most light has heat that comes with it, but it's a cold light. And from that, we're able to do things like this. Chem lights, the little bracelets and things that kids often have fun with. When you look at spider webs, they have the same traits that we've taken to do fiber optics. Probably the internet connection coming to this church along with the telephone is probably going through fiber, which is a hollow like glass tube. When you look at butterflies, if you ever see one like this out in the sunlight, they get really bright and they're beautiful. Man's been able to study them and figure out how to make things brighten in the sunlight. And it's because when you look closely at a microscope into their wings, there's some very distinct patterns there in material. And that's why your cell phone, when you're in the sun, you can see it good. If you had a cell phone 10 years ago, you couldn't see it in the sun. But you can now because they learned how nature does it. Some cosmetics that people use, okay, like casing. I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with casing. But it actually, the color brightens in the sunlight. It doesn't just sort of whitewash it or light wash it to where you can't see it. It's because of what they've learned from nature. Just a few more things and we'll be done. How many of you have been walking out through the woods and you come back with these things stuck in your socks? Yeah. Or you're like our golden retriever. He'll come back and they're just all in his hair. Someone took that exact idea and went and invented Velcro. Velcro works just like it. And they've made a lot of money from it. When you look at a lobster, look at those pinchers. We design pliers based on those. The same grip and everything. This particular tool here is called the woodpecker because it's based on the woodpecker. We can redesign robotics to work just like an elephant's trunk, which is one of the most amazing appendages in nature with what it's able to do. Octopus, amazing creatures, mostly known for their tentacles, but in particularly those little suction cups that are on there. We've ripped them off and made all kinds of things. Yeah. Gecko, you know, the little lizards that can walk on smooth surfaces, and they pick them up and they're making little shoes for us to have the exact same technology so we'll be able to walk on slick surfaces and not slip at all. The kingfisher, very amazing bird because of the aerodynamics, the efficiency, and the speed in which it can fly. Now in Japan, they have a train designed just like the kingfisher's beak. You see, we're not as smart as we thought we were. We just look at what God already did. Go home and look at your dog's paw. You ever notice that they don't slip when it rains on concrete or anything like that? It's because of their paws. So one man looked at the paws of his dog. He was walking, coming back from walking, and realized, I'm sliding all over the place and my dog is fine. So he took his concept and went and made what you now have on the bottom of your shoes, the tread, keep you from slipping. And this is really cool. Teachers will probably see this soon. You know, you have a cat and they can retract their claws and then stick them back out again. They store them, they're retracted so they don't always hurt themselves or cut things. They're going to make thumbtacks based on the retractable claws of a cat. So so when you reach into the drawer to pick them out, they don't stick your fingers. They only actually come out when you poke them into the wall. All from looking at God's creation. So Job chapter 37, verse 14, hearken unto this, O Job, stand still and consider the wondrous works of God. Key thing there is, Job, you got to stand still. You got to use your brain. You got to look around. We're busy, and I know you guys are absolutely busy. I know you're juggling 15 things in your life. Some of you you're got a lot of work at school. You're playing sports. You're trying to have a job. You're trying to help out at home. I know you're juggling a lot. You're juggling a lot more than I did when I was at your age because society has put more on you. But I want you to understand you've got to slow down. The devil wants you to get busy. You've got to slow down and stand still and just spend some time thinking about God's works. Because otherwise your perspective of God gets smaller and smaller and smaller to the point that you're going to wake up one day and you know how big your God's going to be? About 3 pounds, about the size of your brain. And the small God like that is useless. You got to stand still and think about God. David did that in Psalm 139. He said, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. So quickly here, God is bigger than any problem you have. If you can have the right perspective of God, it will help you when you face problems in your life, and you're going to. Psalm 121, verse 2, my help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. Second thing, God's strong enough to move any obstacles in your way. Jeremiah chapter 32, verse 17. This is the verse I signed when I signed my name. Ah, Lord God, behold, thou hast made the heaven and the earth by thy great power and stretched out arm, and there is nothing too hard for thee. And then lastly, God is smart enough to know what is best for you. You can trust Him with your future because He knows a lot more about you and your future than you do. Isaiah chapter 55 and verse 9. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. You don't have His perspective, so trust Him. Hope that's a blessing to you. I hope it causes you to think more about how big God is in your life. And let's go ahead and pray and dismiss, and we'll turn it back over to the administrator. Father, thank you for this time together. Father, I pray that you would speak to hearts, that you would use this, that you would help these young men and women to just really think of just how big and how strong and how smart you are. And I pray that you would have a preeminent position in their life and in their heart, that they would look to you as they raise their families, as they look for their careers, as they go ahead, Father. And we just trust you and thank you. Continue to bless this school. In Jesus' name, amen.